does. They think
Now-
every possession is their last possession. Instead,
Yep.
just throw the ball away, live to fight another day.
Josh Allen. I've spent way too many of my breaths on Josh Allen.
That's stiff arm. I don't know if you saw that stiff arm by Derrick Henry, though. Ball away, live to fight.
I didn't. I did not see it.
It's on Twitter. You should check it out.
I'll have to check it out. I don't think any Derrick Henry stiff arm will ever overtake the Derrick Henry Earl Thomas throwing him out of the club stiff arm.
I mean,
my
this
buddy
stiff
just
arm
sent it to me.
tossed him. He tossed him while he was running.
It's funny. Wow. As soon as you just said that, I got a text. That's fucking funny.
It's the craziest, one of the strongest stiff arms I've ever seen.
He's a strong man. I've heard Derrick Henry's a strong guy. Sources have told me. Derrick Henry's got a little bit of strength to him.
I'll check my sources, but I think that's confirmed.
If you want to go retweet what I just tweeted from the podcast account.
Did you tag me in it?
Oh yeah.
All right.
I had to withhold my entire view on Halloween 3 today.
Believe me, if you want Halloween 3, I'm not going to fight you for it.
I will tell you, I'm not going to draft it because that would be suicide if I did. But in the modern parlance, I stand for Halloween 3. It is never on TV, which pisses me off, but it's out there. That and Halloween 2 are never on TV for whatever.
I actually really love Halloween 2.
I do like Halloween 2, and I agree that it definitely stole from like Friday the 13th and
Sure.
that
Yeah.
respect, but it's
Well,
good.
Friday the 13th changed everything. But I just love how you go. I mean, maybe it'll get drafted, but I love how it goes from like sort of open world to like in the hospital, in the hallways. Like that scares the shit out of me.
Oh yeah, and there's some pretty graphic kills in that movie too. They definitely got inspired by Friday the 13th. They're like, we're gonna ratchet this up, no doubt. But we're definitely gonna have to address the big three of are they horror movies? Obviously,
Well,
Alien,
You said it. Yeah. So Aliens, Predator, and what's the other one?
Batman '89.
I don't think Aliens is,
Me neither.
but you were right when you said if Aliens is, then Predator is as well.
Same thing, really.
Yeah.
And whoever that was replying is private, so I couldn't see anything he was
I
saying.
couldn't see that either. Yeah.
I was like, well, who's Murph talking to? I was like, all right. I guess he's talking to himself. Whatever. Well, far be it from me. Whatever. But Dave, as I was telling Mac before you came on, you have the second pick. I have the first pick. Mac has the wheel pick. So try not to do yourself in like you did last time. You got a historically low amount of votes in that poll, dude.
Hey, listen, I had good movies. It's just movies that aren't really, notable. Like Keith had all the movies that like everyone's gonna know just by looking at them.
Well, and the issue with the 70s is there is a steep drop off after like the top 10 or 12.
Yeah, that was
like there's no good movies left.
That was the problem, my dear friend Dave. Well, also Dave let The Exorcist get back to me, which was just unconscionable on his part.
I don't like The Exorcist though.
No.
Like, I
You're not
understand
going for votes then.
why it's a great movie, but I just don't like it.
I'm not going for laughs. I'm going for gasps.
I agree, but I picked some movies that just my streaming service was maybe just a little too dark.
Your Shudder was more like a wretch. We'll put it that way.
People would sign up for free trial, watch one movie, and be scared shitless and head out.
Yeah, they'll be like, "Wow, Eraserhead, Don't Look Now." Like, what a family friendly time. All right, well, we'll get this
Fun
underway.
for all ages.
Oh yeah, fun for all ages. All right, 3, 2. Welcome in. It's Crossing State Lines. We're back for another horror movie decade draft. Dave and I, fresh off getting our asses handed to us in the 70s by Rich Keefe, our champion in the 70s, by an overwhelming 2-1 margin. Dave and I could have combined our votes, wouldn't have come anywhere close. But Dave, historically low performance on your part in the poll. What do you have to say for yourself?
I appreciate you continuously bringing that up. How historically low my performance was, but yeah, I mean it wasn't my best showing, but I'm still confident in the movies I picked. I think they're still good movies.
They're good movies, but I know you don't like The Exorcist, like you just said. Technically on air, but off air. You shouldn't have let it fall to me. I'm just saying. Anyway. Dave, we have a chance to redeem ourselves here today. And joining us for the 80s is Mac of the Mac and Goo program. Mac, welcome to the show.
Hey, hello. How are you? I will say this. Anytime I've ever been in a poll with Keefe, of whether he did the best thing or not, everyone votes for Keith. So you're just if you come in second, that's the true win there. So
by inviting him on the show, we essentially said, "Here's a boxing glove. You can just punch up in the mouth." Great. No, really, please deliver one to our sucker, please.
What was the final percentage that he got? What was
he got 63% of the vote.
Oh my God.
I looked away. I went for a run. I left. I was ahead by 5%. I came back. I was down 30%. I was like, all right, well, that's over.
If we're counting though, there was one guy that commented that he accidentally voted for Keith instead of me. So how many other votes? Like
yeah, buddy, that would help y'all.
Maybe instead of 8%, I got like 12%. You never know.
Yeah,
Twitter does make it really hard to vote.
I know. I do that all the time.
Dave, since we're in the 80s, you might want to avoid dreaming that hard. You know, you might get caught by Freddy Krueger in this.
Ayo, big market tease.
Big market. How many Friday the 13th movies are going to get drafted today? That's not the right franchise. You know what I mean? But also, a lot of those came out in the 80s. But anyway, we're doing the 80s today. And like we kind of touched on with Keith last week, there are a lot more movies in the 80s. The pool is bigger. It's just a bit shallower. They really don't get to the level of a Halloween, or that maybe there's one or two, but we don't get to the level of Halloween or an Alien or Jaws or even The Exorcist. Like that right there is a pretty key top four. The 80s, there's a lot more to look at and think, all right, well, is this the number one pick, or is this like I'm between two movies? I think I know my number one. But I don't know. How do you guys kind of read the 80s for horror?
To me, there's one that I think is head and shoulders above the others. That's my second favorite horror movie of all time, behind Halloween. And to me, that's the one that I would clearly take number one. But I think there's like 4 or 5 all-time greats. But after that, it drops off to a point where there's a bunch of movies that are all pretty good for one reason or another, but definitely not great. And so you run into this thing with 80s horror movies that wasn't really present in the 70s, where they start playing with the humor and the camp. And so the decision I'm going to have to make here is, do I want to take more campy movies because they're kind of quintessential 80s types of stuff, or do I just want to take the better movie?
What about you, Dave? What's your approach this time around?
Well, to not come in last, that's number one. But number two is I just think that the top of the 80s, the list probably isn't as strong as the top 3 for the 70s. The top 3 for the 70s is almost historic with how good it is. But I think there's a little bit more depth between 4 and 8 as opposed to the 70s. I think there's a little bit less depth.
If you looked away for a second, you might think Dave was talking about Friday the 13th sequels rather than just the rankings of all movies. But yes, I don't think I wrote down many Friday the 13th sequels. But I'm looking forward to it. I do like the 80s. The 80s is just a decade I like in general, even if the horror crop, crop, that could be a tease to a movie.
Oh,
takes it.
Oh,
because Dave hates it.
It's not great.
No, it's not.
Great.
It's not. But it's better than the 8 sequels it got, which you could say about anything in the 80s, to be frank. But yeah. Anyway, so let's get into it. So I don't know if I mentioned this already, but I have the top pick. Dave has the second pick. Mac has the wheel, so he'll get third and fourth. We'll swing back around to snake draft. So with that being said, I'll kick it off. And again, like I said, I was between 2 movies. I know neither of them would get back to me, whether I pick one or the other. But I got to go with The Shining. I mean, it is one of the best movies ever made. I know Pat Lane's not going to vote for me just because I picked The Shining. And he
the book's better.
Right.
Yeah, the book.
The apologists of The Shining. I know Ken Borders' vote I probably got, though, because he's big on The Shining. So
I love this. I think this was the number one pick. And to me, part of horror movies are ghost stories. And this is it for ghost stories. This is the quintessential ghost story. It's got, 7 or 8 iconic scenes in it. Iconic lines. I mean, it runs the whole gauntlet of what you're looking for in an all-time great. And there's also like just the idea of the movie is creepy. You've got 3 people plus, a hotel worker near the hotel staying there by themselves for 3 months without ghosts. That's creepy. I don't like that. You add ghosts, that's creepy as shit. So I would probably argue it's the scariest movie. I think for sure the best movie of the 80s, and I would probably argue the scariest one as well.
Yeah, and I guess I had to keep last week. I was anxious to have you on for the 80s, Max. I know you hate Jack Nicholson.
I do.
It must be very hard to say this is one of the greatest movies of the 80s.
Yeah. This was I guess maybe because I saw this well before I had really thought out how much I don't like him.
It's true.
And this was him before he could play himself in movies. You know what I mean? He was
Right.
still character acting then. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It was only 5 years after Cuckoo's Nest, so he was still not quite what he was at. It's a pretty good run there from the late 60s to the 80s, and then he became, Jack Nicholson. So, yeah. So, Dave, you have the second overall pick. Anxious to see where you go with it. What are you going to take?
I was kind of torn here between a few, and I don't want to give away the others because maybe Mac won't take them. But I'm gonna take Nightmare on Elm Street for my first pick. I just think that it's one of the iconic movies of horror in general. I love it. I remember watching it in college for the third or fourth time already. I had a horror movies class that I took. But I mean, Wes Craven is awesome. You got to have a Wes Craven movie in your platform if you want to do anything with horror. Obviously, with every horror movie, it doesn't necessarily always age well with the technology and the special effects they can use. But to me, it's still such a classic movie to watch, and it's one I'll probably end up watching in the next week or so. Now that I'm doing this.
Yeah, for me, I would have been between that and a couple others for the second pick. It's a good pick. Between Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, I think are like the definitive slashers. I'd probably lean Friday the 13th just because it came first and a lot of movies copied it, but you can't go wrong with taking Freddy at number 2 there.
No, I mean, you could argue, literally they fought each other 20 years later. So you
right.
More iconic. They beat the living hell out of each other both times.
Yeah.
Both times throughout the movie. But you can't go wrong. It's Freddy Krueger. You're going right off the bat, right off the rip, mainstream as you possibly can. Pretty much that and Jason are like the two most mainstream you could possibly go in the 80s. Like, yeah, there's Jack Torrance, but you're not going to be buying a Jack Torrance mask. Right. You're going to buy a Jack Torrance bat, like walking around the neighborhood. Oh, I'm Jack Torrance. Remember that scene from The Shining where he threatens to beat his wife? Like, that's a classic. But Freddy Krueger coming out of the TV and sucking Johnny Depp into the bed, like, it's a classic. There's really no other way to put it.
Yep. I would say if you're going to compare Friday the 13th to a Nightmare on Elm Street, the franchises, Nightmare is a way better franchise as it goes on.
Oh yeah,
there's actual good movies after the first.
Well,
one.
Freddy never went to space.
That's a great point. So I guess he's due.
He never went to Manhattan. He never went to space.
The Manhattan one.
The Leprechaun did go to space.
Lep did go to the space. Yep.
We do have to. Well, that would be more of a '90s thing, but the Leprechaun did go to space, so we gotta tab that one for the '90s. But Mac, you have back-to-back picks. What are you gonna go with?
Yeah, so I'll take Friday the 13th here. It's probably my favorite slasher, and it was the one I think that kind of set the guidelines for how slashers are gonna go. You have a camp movie, which turned into a whole genre in itself almost. And I think just the setup of this movie of, there's a story about a kid that drowned in the lake and that's kind of spooky in and of itself. You see people start dying on screen and off. It just, the way it's shot to, you never see the killer. You just see the people getting killed. And to me, it's one of the great, I guess not a twist, but a reveal at the end that it's actually his mother. It's Jason's mother that's the killer. For me, it makes it such a great movie because you don't expect an old woman to be committing all these things. You expect a Michael Myers, a Jason Voorhees. And I think that's why I love this movie more so than most other slashers. It's because it's a little more realistic. You could actually see a scenario where these murders take place. And of course you get the iconic, the breathing noises.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Friday the 13th was an easy pick for me there. And like I said, that between that and Friday or A Nightmare on Elm Street for the best slashers of the decade. Starting off the second round here, I have a much tougher decision because there's 2 movies left that I love and 2 that I think have their own argument for best horror movie of the 80s. I wouldn't make them, but they definitely have the crowd for them. I want to get a John Carpenter movie, so I'm going to take The Thing, 1982's The Thing, which is so good. This is one of those movies that in and of itself, what you see on screen isn't that scary. It's everything in between, uneasy the whole entire time. You don't know what's going on. There's an alien form that can take the form of people. So it's sort of the silent times that are scary in this movie. And that's not a lot of horror movies can pull that off. And so to me, The Thing is probably John Carpenter's second best movie. It's no Halloween, but I'll take it here happily.
And not to mention, it's a claustrophobic one because there's nowhere to go.
Right.
Stuck in the Arctic.
Yeah, you're in the middle of the Arctic in a base. There's
similar to Alien, where there's nowhere to go. Nothing.
Right.
There's no one who's going to help you. You have to figure your way out of this. Except in Alien, you think, well, I guess in Alien also you can't trust everybody. But in The Thing, you can't especially trust anybody. But that is a great back-to-back. You have a classic slasher and a classic remake. One of the best remakes of all time, I think.
That's a good point.
And also featured prominently in Halloween, if I'm not mistaken. It was one of the movies they were watching in Halloween. But that was the other thing. You know what I mean? Not John Carpenter wasn't going into the future and picking out The Thing and putting it on the TV. But Dave, you have a very interesting pick coming up now because I have a couple things on my list and I really don't want you to take my next pick. So that'd be nice if you didn't. Like I appreciate.
Can you let me know what the next pick is that you're going to take, and I promise I won't take it.
Okay. All right. Cujo.
Cujo. Yeah, don't take Cujo.
I'll take Cujo.
Okay. See, look, that's what a good person I am. You told me, and I'm going to respect your wishes. I won't even take Cujo.
Oh, what a guy. What a stand-up fella. They make him so good up there in Stoneham, I tell you. There's no better time.
I'm unique. I'm one of a kind, I guess.
Sure.
I was going to take The Thing. I think that's a great pick. I think that's easily, for me, the best movie left on the board.
Yeah.
For me, it takes a little bit of a drop off here. I'm gonna go with Evil Dead. I made a mistake last time of not going mainline and streamline and going with just classics that I like, and I paid the price with 8%. So I'm gonna try to stay streamlined and mainline here. So I'm gonna take Evil Dead. I think it's a really strong movie. Bruce Campbell, I never even realized until I got older was in this movie. For some reason. Sam Raimi, obviously, another great mind. He came out with Crawl this year. He's been around, done everything. It's actually, this is one of these movies where it's really interesting. It kind of flies by because it's so short. It's only like, it's not, I don't think it's even an hour and a half. It's just a really, really short movie, but it's really interesting and engaging. And it's unlike Cabin in the Woods. This is actually a good movie about a cabin in the woods.
Oh,
wait,
pot
what?
shots. Taking pot shots.
Hold on. No, hold on. Flag on the play. You don't like Cabin in the Woods?
Wait, no. What's the movie with the movie with the people that bleed from the eyes? What's that one? Not Cabin in the Woods. That's from 2009, I think.
You're thinking of the one with the dad from Step Brothers. What's the one you're thinking of? The one people bleed from the eyes?
Yeah, they have
Evil Dead remake? I don't know.
Yeah, they've remade it Cabin Fever. That's
yeah.
Well, hold
different.
on.
Much different.
The original
Cabin in the Woods is actually a good movie.
The original Cabin Fever with Ryder Strong is a classic.
No, I'm talking about the 4 remakes they've done or whatever since.
Yeah, they've done a ton of remakes. They've also remade that movie too. I didn't think completely off the path, but Cabin Fever was not deserving of a remake. It was never big enough to be remade or made in the first place, really.
It wasn't that good in the first place.
Right.
No, it really wasn't.
Yeah, but someone saw that and like, I got to do this film justice. I got to remake this.
Some directors thought,
you know what?
I had my own flair to this.
All those Boy Meets World fans, they were wrong about Ryder Strong. Is it wrong to be strong? You be the judge. Anyway, moving on to me. I have a wheel pick. So I'm going to take 2 movies, obviously. I'm just forfeit one of those picks. I am going to start off with The Fly with Jeff Goldblum. Bonafide classic. It is absolutely disgusting. Really,
so gross.
Not an easy watch, but it is a classic. Really, not much else to say about it. I mean, it is gross. You really can't do it justice by talking about it. But I've also been a big Jeff Goldblum fan, like for forever. Really, everything he does is captivating. So even this, where he's like gooey and leaking all over the place and turns himself into Brundlefly, it's disgusting. But people love it. It came in, what was it, top 30 on your countdown this month?
Yeah, I think it was for sure top 40, somewhere in that at like 25 to 35 range, I think.
All right, so I'm going to take The Fly to start, and I think I'm actually going to take the superior Evil Dead 2. Dave.
That's a good pick.
Evil Dead 2.
Pick.
I was going to take that on the swing back.
You're not going to get it. But the 80s was the decade of the sequel. There were tons and tons of sequels to all these horror franchises. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Evil Dead made one that is one of the best. If we're talking horror sequels, it is definitely in the conversation for best of all time. unless you're counting Jaws 3D or Halloween 3D. Those are really on their own. But next level down, it's got to be Evil Dead 2. So
yeah, I think you could argue a little cheaply because it's more of a remake than it is a sequel, but it is a sequel. It's got 2 in the title. Yeah, Evil Dead 2, I think there's a lot of you could, I guess, say this about Evil Dead as well. There's a lot of people that would claim it's the best horror movie of the 80s. And if you're talking 80s horror, it's super campy, and what's more campy than the Evil Dead movies? So
right. And where do you stand on Army of Darkness, horror movie wise?
It's less horror than either Evil Dead movie, and there's not a ton of horror in either Evil Dead movie. So I would say it's not in the same way that Aliens is not. Like, yeah, if someone said, okay, it's a horror movie, fine. I don't think it is, but fine.
Right. We should touch on that real quick. If you're expecting Aliens, Predator, or Batman 89 to get drafted today, we have deemed all those movies not to be horror. So
I just think, Aliens is an action movie, as is Predator.
Yes.
And I'm not actually scared at any points of those movies. Now, I guess there are some scenes where you're kind of on the edge of your seat, but you're never actually scared. And in Alien, there's like 7 scenes where you're actually scared. And I can't argue for Aliens being a horror movie.
No, I can't either. And it opens up the door to other movies. Like I said, Predator, even Jurassic Park, it opens the door for that. Like you might as well. Like it's a free for all at that point. So I get it. And I know it's like Murph said on Twitter, it's on a lot of people's list, but I didn't write that list. So I don't know what's
you got to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah. But Dave, I got you reeling. The Fly, Evil Dead 2. How's he going to respond? I know you're a big fan of Child's Play, but
I mean, I'm not taking Child's Play. I'll spoil that for you.
Cujo? Is it finally Cujo time?
You'll have to see. I'm between 2 right now. I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with Possession. Possession. I know it's probably a little bit off the board. Jake, it wasn't even on your list. I'm a little disappointed, but
also wasn't on my list.
I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea what the hell Possession is.
It's about a movie that Sam Neill's in it, and
I'm in.
I think it's a foreign film. I think it's like a European film.
Oh yeah, it was Sam Neill.
Yeah, the adaptation is European. Yeah. It's sort of like one of the grossest possession movies you can ever see.
Okay.
Overall, it's up there. It's obviously, I think The Exorcist is obviously number 1 for everybody, no matter where you are. Yeah. But it's really kind of disturbing and gross. So I feel like I need to kind of add one of those movies into my platform. So I'm going to take that.
That's what made you so popular last time. So you might as well rekindle.
Well, I'll take one of them, and then I can round it out with some other mainstream ones.
I honestly thought you misspoke on the title. I thought you meant another movie, but I'm not going to say it because I feel like it's going to get drafted before it gets back to me. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. But Sam Neill's in it. So, I mean, there
you go. A young, dashing Sam Neill. So I'm aware of that movie. I have never seen it, but I for everything I've read says it's a great movie. And I have also read that there's one of the grossest single scenes in a movie of all time.
It's a pretty gross movie in general. Yeah. It's overall, it's just really kind of, you watch it and you just don't really want to watch it again after that.
I'm pretty sure Sam Neill's been 40 years old his entire life. I don't think he's ever been young.
He's
never, ever. I don't think he has been. But anyway, Sam Neill, check him out. We'll put a link in the description. Mac, it is to you for the 3rd and the 4th pick.
I really was hoping Evil Dead 2 would slip to me here. So now we're at the point where I've got
on the board. I'm just throwing it out there. Cujo's still there if you want.
There's 6 or 7 movies here that I kind of value about the same. But again, we are going to be thrown into a Twitter poll. So I don't know if this is necessarily my favorite, but I'm going to take Poltergeist here from 1982, where it's got a couple of iconic scenes. The creepy fucking little blonde girl, they're here. It gets parodied a ton. And I think because it was a PG rated movie that a lot of fucking kids saw this before they ever should have. And this probably scared the shit out of a lot more kids than it needed to. So give me Poltergeist, if for nothing else than its name.
Craig Nelson.
I'm lacking some campiness in my picks here. You took The Fly, which would have been another consideration here. So I think I'll take, other than the Evil Dead movies, my favorite campy 80s horror movie, Gremlins.
Yeah.
Gremlins from 1984. The premise is outrageous. This little alien being who can turn into this crazy creature that you've got to fight, and it's kids fighting them, which I think is like fun to watch when you're 12, 13. It's an easy horror movie to get younger people into, and it's kind of funny as well, which speaks to the campiness of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I love Gremlins. It's a very good movie. Mike Ehrmantraut's in it, of course.
Yep, true.
Can't forget.
Does he
Fantastic performance as the bumbling cop, but he's good. I mean, I love Mike Ehrmantraut, Jonathan Banks, but it's a good movie, very campy. Like you said, the premise is just ridiculous. And when I rewatched it last year, I didn't remember it took so long for the Gremlins to actually like show up.
I haven't rewatched it in a while, but it is, isn't it like 35 minutes into the movie?
Yeah, very slow build. It's like it's like really building the tension until you actually see like what one looks like. I mean, what's his name? The Mogwai is the most adorable little thing in the world.
Well, and I think it sort of kicked back off when Furbies became famous in the 90s, and you had fucking Furbies talking in the back of closets at 3 a.m. and you're like, good Lord, get this thing out of here.
Yeah, just get put in a microwave. Why is the Furby in a microwave? Well, it started talking to me at 3 a.m. I didn't want to take any chances. No, I didn't feed it. I swear to God. But also the shout out to the new batch. That probably won't get taken, but I know people like the new batch as well.
Yep.
I'm sure there's a lot of people who say it's better than Gremlins, but it's definitely not.
I agree.
Yeah, but Gremlins, good pick. Poltergeist also. That's the one I thought Dave was saying when he started with Puh. And I was like, oh, he's gonna take Poltergeist. Then he said Session, and I'm like, okay. I mean, that's cool. I'm sure it was remade over here in a much worse fashion. I'm sure it was remade as like the something like The Possession, knowing our unoriginality here. It's probably just remade with like some other actor and much, much worse.
If they don't have Sam Neill, I'm out. I'm sorry.
So Dave, what Dario Argento movie are you gonna take now, or are we gonna go with another master of horror?
I appreciate the confidence here. I'm gonna take.
I will remind you, Cujo is still on the board. I know you got a dog. I know you love dogs.
The kind of guy I am, I don't want to rob you of that joy. I'll save it. I'm gonna take Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer here.
Good pick.
I think that's a really good value for where I am right now.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Rooker is really good in this. It's really like one of these like mind blowing kind of ones. Like you sit back and you're not really like terrified, but you just like you're in your
disgusted.
Own,
disgusted.
You're in your almost head, like your own head. It's just really disgusting, really weird watch. And honestly, you watch it and you kind of just like feel like you need some fresh air and need to go for a walk after. It's just a really weird one.
And the fact that it's based on a true story of, I forget the name of the serial killer. Henry Jones or something like that, or whatever it is. The fact that it's based on a true story makes it inherently eerie. Yeah. So it has that going for it too.
And Michael Rooker is very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
That's
fantastic in this.
He's great in everything, but
yeah, I mean, you can't really knock him. But again, I think for this, especially for this pick, it's a really good value here.
It's a good value to get in the fourth round. It is definitely kind of more of like a deep cut. Like a lot of horror movie fans really know it, and it's got a lot of like respect in like horror circles. But it's definitely not one you're just gonna flip on the TV and like put in the background like Halloween or something.
Yeah, you're not gonna have a fun watch with Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
You'll probably stop by and like, oh, what do you got on? Oh, I got Henry, Portrait.
Yeah, you're gonna want to leave the room actually.
Classic. Oh yeah, you remember this scene? Remember this one? No, I don't. Okay. All right, so it's back to me. I am going to go with. I'm going to start off gory, and then get Pat Lane, of course. Cujo is a fantastic book. The movie, not so much.
What did I say? Yeah. I called it.
Well, Pat wasn't here when I took Redacted #1 overall. Or listen back later. So I'm going to start with Hellraiser.
Okay. Yep.
So Pinhead is probably the most forgotten of the big 80s slasher like villains, and especially since Pinhead is kind of like he was in the first movie, unlike Jason, like in Friday the 13th, but he got played up a lot more in the sequels. It was like he was just a part of the Cenobites in the first movie, and he was obviously like the leader of them. Which, if you haven't seen Hellraiser, which I'm assuming both of you have, disgusting movie. It is absolutely revolting to watch. It's it just the opening scene prepares you immediately for what it's going to be. It is just disgusting, and the plot itself is really distressing and disturbing, and it's a hard like 100 minutes or whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's like so sci-fi-ish too that you're sort of confused when you're watching it. You're like, okay, all right, these Cenobites, whatever, But Pinhead is what you always remember, and I think for better or worse, in the later movies, Pinhead is, they try to turn him into Jason, basically.
Yeah, and he didn't have the staying power. Also, he looked disgusting. So like, you're not going to be selling merchandise with Pinhead. Like you can put on a hockey mask and say you're Jason. You're not going to be walking your kid around town at 8 years old with a Pinhead mask. Like it's just
You're
not
going to put pins in your head, Jake.
No, probably not. I mean, you could do it, I guess, but it is a little bit convoluted of a plot. It's really a strange movie, but I feel like getting in the fourth round is
convoluted is a good word for it.
Yeah, you could do better. I've never read the book. I heard it's good. It's by Clive Barker, who apparently was like Stephen King's heir apparent, even though Stephen King still writes books. So I want to make sure that this qualifies before I take it in the fifth round. Are we allowing Beetlejuice?
If you look it up on IMDb, it says horror underneath of its title. So it scared me as a kid, which is good enough for me. So I would allow it. I mean, you're gonna have to live with the critiques of people that say it isn't. Actually, no, it says comedy and fantasy on IMDb. I don't know. If you want to take it, take it. No sweat off my back.
Dave, what do you think?
I wasn't gonna take it because I don't think it is. But
then I'll play it fair. I'll play it fair.
No, I don't care if you do.
No, I'll play it fair. Okay. I got critiqued for Jaws last week of all things. So
I don't want to take it because I don't want the critiques. But
the difference is, and I know Jaws is not scary now,
right?
But in fucking 1976, you had people that would not go in the ocean because of Jaws. That makes it a horror movie.
Yeah,
that's simple fact.
I think Jaws is a horror movie. Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, I'm going to take one that I feel like, since it's rated R, you kind of have to qualify it as a horror movie. I'm going to take An American Werewolf in London.
Oh, my God, you son of a bitch.
Never mind. Take Beetlejuice.
I said to take Beetlejuice.
I didn't. But it is, I think, far and away the best movie left on the board, at least on my list. There's a couple others that are really good, but American Werewolf in London is a classic, and getting it in the fifth round, I think, is a pretty good steal. So I'm happy with that.
Yep.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
Great. The transformation scene is unbelievable.
It's some of the best, especially at the time in 1981. The special effects, the practical effects, incredible.
Bad Moon Rising. Who doesn't love a little CCR in their movie? I mean, come on. I got a good soundtrack, too. I mean,
yep.
But yeah, so Dave, I can tell that you didn't like that pick. Beetlejuice is still on the board.
Son of a bitch.
You should take Beetlejuice.
You should take Beetlejuice now. I think actually once you say it, it's written down, it's set in stone. So oh man, this is tough. This is where we're kind of at the end of the line here with good movies. I'm just gonna go with one that everyone knows, and hopefully that gets me some points. I'm gonna take The Fog. It's just, for me, I feel like this is one of the movies where you can kind of watch it, and to me it never really scared the crap out of me, but it's still a good horror thriller movie. Keeps running to see John Carpenter. I just feel like it's a solid choice for what we have left.
Yeah, can't go wrong with it. Can't go wrong with it at all. I don't know. Yeah, it is a Carpenter movie. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, you got a John Carpenter movie, so there you go.
I have to. I got Wes Craven. Carpenter.
Is it me? On me now?
Oh, sorry, Dave. I didn't write your pick down. What was it?
The Fog.
Oh, The Fog.
Actually, you know what it was? It's American Werewolf in London. Do you want
That's wild stuff right there. Who would have thought? I mean, you said Cujo, right? That John Carpenter classic.
Oh.
Do I have back-to-backs right here? Is that
you sure do? You got back-to-back picks.
My last two picks here. So I'll ask a question as well, and I don't know if I'm going to take it, but I think it's similar to the Beetlejuice discussion. Not in that it's also funny, but The Lost Boys. Would you consider that horror?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So give me first here A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors.
The Dream Warriors.
I missed out on Nightmare on Elm Street. To me, this is one of the best horror movies of all time because it flips the script. The whole thing about Friday the 13th and the whole thing why Freddy's fucking terrifying is because when you're sleeping, he attacks. Well, what does everyone do? They sleep. What they figure out and what they smartly do in A Nightmare on Elm Street on 3 is the kids figure out, oh, it's a dream. I can control what goes on in the dream. And they, quote unquote, defeat Freddy, which I think is an awesome, sort of flip on its head of the horror genre. So that came out in 87. Give me that. And now I am either going to take The Lost Boys or Beetlejuice. And I don't know which one. Since you declined Beetlejuice, give me The Lost Boys. The Lost Boys is a classic kind of vampire story. It's not super scary, but it is a quote unquote horror movie. And it's a very good movie. In fact, just not that scary.
Great soundtrack too.
Yes.
Nick Fryer says take Beetlejuice. I think we've established now that Beetlejuice not on the board. But if you want to do a little UDFA team, maybe you could take Beetlejuice if you want. But Dave, your last pick. Again, I hate to beat a dead horse. Cujo's still on the board. If you want it, if you're interested, Cujo is still on the board.
I think we agreed that it was for you.
I see. I don't want it. Is the problem.
Okay, so for my last pick, I'm actually going to flip the script on you, Jake. I'm going to take Beetlejuice because I don't see a lot of other things left on the board that I want.
You got to get the votes.
Because I'm sure as hell I'm taking Children of the Corn. I'll tell you that much.
No, don't worry. People get to possession and fall asleep when they look at your marquee. So don't worry about it. We'll be fine.
But they're all on the same page, so they'd be falling asleep reading Beetlejuice. So
we'll see possession and be like, what the hell is that? The Exorcist came out last decade.
Listen, there's nothing left on the board that's really that interesting to me. You could go for the name and go Child's Play, you go Cujo, you go Halloween 2, Children of the Corn, Halloween 3. You could go a bunch of different routes, but I'm going to take Beetlejuice because I think the name recognition alone is strong enough for me to get some extra votes.
Love it. You got to change it up after last week.
Good old Panda and Dave.
I have to get more than 8%. It's not a high bar to clear.
Pat Lane keeps telling us to stop with the Stephen King slander, but that's not going to happen. Anyway, my last pick, I'm going to take Halloween 2. I like Halloween 2 a lot. I could, like you said, Dave, you could go Child's Play and just go on name recognition, but if I'm going on movies I actually want to watch, I'll probably watch Halloween 2.
And that are actually scary.
Yeah, like Child's Play, there are a couple of jump scares, and that's fine. I can't, like Halloween 2 I haven't seen it in a while, actually, because they never put it on TV. Like we talked about off air, like 2 and 3, never on TV. 1, 4, and 5 and 6, always on. Like, ad nauseum, always on TV. If you can hear Bye Bye Little Sebastian, that's playing in the background here. So rip Little Sebastian. But anyway, that is my last pick, and I'm sticking to it. Halloween 2.
Yeah, I like it. And like I said off air, it does a great job. The first movie, you're out in the open in the streets of Haddonfield, and 2's the opposite. You're in an enclosed building with long, scary ass hallways. It's dark. It's late at night. Then it opens right where the first one ends. And I think it's actually a very, very good sequel. I understand it adds the stupid supernatural stuff and she's his sister and all that stuff. But if you just take it for what it was, an actual scary, pretty good horror sequel.
Before I hit a few honorable mentions, let me just read off our lineups here. So Jake, yeah, that's me. I have The Shining, The Fly, Evil Dead 2, Hellraiser, An American Werewolf in London, and Halloween 2. Dave, you have A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Evil Dead, Possession, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, The Fog, and Beetlejuice. And Mac, you have Friday the 13th, The Thing, Poltergeist, Gremlins, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, and The Lost Boys. So just a few honorables that did not get drafted, but were on my list anyway. Obviously, I wasn't joking about Cujo. The movie's not good, but it still exists.
It's on my list.
Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Actually, pretty good movie.
Mm-hmm.
They Live. Shout out Roddy Piper. Rest in peace. Reanimator. That's
everyone knows it for the one scene.
Yeah.
Not my favorite though.
I get that.
It's it's if you love B movies, that's it. That's the one. Right
exactly. Child's Play, like we said. Creep Show. I'm surprised that one didn't get picked actually, but it's there. Children of the Corn. I know people hate it, but it did come out in the 80s. That's a fact. It did come out. And then the last one on my list is Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. Let me park on that curb for like 3 seconds real quick.
God.
So Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is not a good movie. Okay, it's not. But it is better than people give it credit for. I get that just being different isn't a good enough reason to say it's a good movie, but I can see what they were trying to do. They just got caught in the unfortunate situation of Michael Myers being such a world-stealing slasher that they couldn't do anything different. And that's the reason why the next 3 movies have his name in it. So people didn't think, is this movie also going to be about bringing Halloween back to its origins and putting masks on? It's also, if you've never seen it, the most disgusting of the first 3, probably, actually, which is it says something. 2 is gross, but 3 has like a lot like kids die in it, and that's really, really dark. But the biggest issue with it, other than the whole no Michael Myers thing, is the acting is horrible. Like,
there's some really bad acting in
it. They could have at least sprung for not even like a C-lister, like a D-lister. Like they could have sprung for something. Like
the idea of the movie is pretty good. And the main issue, like you said, though, was by calling it Halloween, people expected Michael Myers. And even on rewatches, you're like, oh, this is part of the Halloween franchise. Where the fuck's Michael Myers? Yeah. I like the movie more than most. I don't know if I would say I like it, though.
Right. And I think what they could have done is kind of like what they're going to do with Knives Out. Maybe if they kept Donald Pleasence in the movie, maybe like if they kept one consistent theme, like maybe bring him back, be like, all right, well, maybe he can help us like look into it or something like that.
Right. He could have been the one investigating that company.
Exactly. Yeah. So that could have been that. That could have been cool. But instead, they just said, let's get no one. And John Carpenter left. So they were like, well, his friend took over making it. And it's clear that it didn't. And then, like I said, the next 3 movies have his name in it. So, yeah, they couldn't. They had to bring him back. That was what brought all the money in. So I get it. But also the third biggest problem, the movie has nothing to do with witches at all.
Yeah. So calling it Season of the Witch, you'd think you'd see a couple witches. Maybe it takes place in Salem. Nope. Yeah. Nothing to do with that at all. That's so maybe it is a bad movie, but it's not the worst movie of all time. Like a lot of people play
it's by far not the worst in Halloween series either.
No, not even close.
Like I know Goo showed his Letterboxd earlier, but it's right in the middle. It's ahead of like Halloween 2 and the other.
He hates Halloween 2 because of
I meant
all the stuff it adds.
The zombie Halloween.
Oh, H2.
Yeah. The zombie Halloween 2. Then it's also had a Resurrection with Busta Rhymes, which has maybe the best Halloween movie quote in any movie of the franchise. Which is crazy that this whole saga ends with Busta Rhymes beating the living hell out of Michael Myers. Can you imagine telling somebody in 1978, this franchise, which you just started with like a shoestring budget, 20 years from now, a rapper is going to kill them.
Right. Well, because in between, I think, 6 and 8, and actually, because H2O came out in 98, but in between 6
Scream ripoff
and Resurrection, you had Scream, you had I Know What You Did Last Summer, and you had all these young, sexy teens.
Final Destination.
So like, what do we need in a Halloween movie? Young, sexy teens.
And Resurrection was the one that also, in the same way that H2O ripped off Scream with the teenager thing, Resurrection ripped off Blair Witch and like all those movies with the found footage. So it's crazy how Halloween started so many trends, and then literally every Halloween sequel after is pretty much a ripoff of something. You know what? If they started it,
we can say that. I'm a little surprised Child's Play didn't get taken, only because Chucky is so well known. But that said, like that movie, the idea, more so when you're a kid, there were some creepy ass dolls, and I guess there are adults that are probably afraid of dolls. But then when you rewatch those movies, I think they're fucking hysterical. Chucky's little legs scampering around trying to stab people is just funny to me.
Child's Play is another scenario where they did the Michael Myers thing, where after Child's Play, every sequel had Chucky's name in it.
Right. Right.
It's like, all right, well, clearly this is what we're going to go with. Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, Bride of Chucky 2, Chucky Lives. Well, I don't know what the hell they're all called. Yeah. But you know what? It's Chucky. So that is the draft. In a couple of days, so day after tomorrow, whatever that is, Thursday, I lose track. I'll post the poll. Dave and I'll probably get whipped again. That's just how these things go.
That was pretty close. I think we all have. I actually just having The Shining might seal the deal for a lot of people. But
I'm not getting Pat Lane's votes. That's all I need to know. Maybe I'll get Ken's though. Maybe we'll see if that balances out. But Mac, thanks for joining us. Where can we find you?
Thanks for having me. You can find me at Fleetwood JMac on Twitter. Our podcast is Mac and Goo Podcast. You can find us anywhere podcasts are found. And recently, we just got a Manscaped. That's right, a Manscaped deal. If you're having a little issue, keeping your undercarriage in check, go to manscaped.com, promo code Mac and Goo, all one word.
Well, there you go. I like Mac and Goo. Great podcast. Listen every week. It's good stuff. Keep it up. Love it. Go check it out. If you haven't seen him, Mac is on iTunes. Is it Mac and Goo or ampersand Goo?
Ampersand. Mac ampersand Mac Shift 7 Goo.
Okay. Check that out. Dave, where can we find you?
You can find me at David_Albiani.
Perfect. I'm at Jacob_Morocco, the podcast, SCSL Podcast on Twitter. On our CSLpodcast.com, Dave and I just did a joint review of Hubie Halloween. Just incredible stuff.
Did you guys enjoy it?
We did. I can't lie. I did enjoy it. Because I went in thinking it was going to be, like he said, the worst movie you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then I was like, all right, well, it wasn't. I mean, it looked like Julie Bowen was acting against a green screen the whole time. But it was, and I can't blame her, really. But you saw it, right?
No, I refuse to watch it.
Okay, well, I understand that. But there is, so if you're ever going to see it, there's a cameo from Shaq that is unbelievable. Like,
I did hear there are a ton of really funny cameos.
There are.
Yeah.
But
There
I
are.
was like, well, that's not going to get me to watch the movie. What about the movie?
That's true. No, that's fair. That is fair. But anyway, if you have any interest in looking at that stuff, go check it out at CSLpodcast.com. We'll be back tomorrow. We got Jeopardy, and then later in the week, we're talking about The Boys, which like literally every podcast on the planet's talking about. So
You have to. You have to.
At this point. So anyway, join us then. We'll see you guys around. All right. Let me end the broadcast and we'll be good to go.